Hey guys, it is good to see you again. Welcome back for another episode of Saab Talk Live. We're going to hang out here live on Facebook and on YouTube for the next half hour or so, tell some Saab stories and bring you up to date on a real interesting race car that some of you may have seen at SOC if you made it to Albany. So a lot
hmm
to talk about. Glad you're here. I'm Lee Kelso.
I'm Mark Romisher, and on tonight's show, we're going to talk a little bit about that race car and also some of the suspension mods and performance mods that go into making this car really perform on the track and even good for getting a burger or paying for a toll occasionally.
Yeah, it's a great little story. And if you guys want to jump in and ask some questions about suspension mods and just kind of other stuff about making your Saab go a little bit faster, chat's working. I hope we're going to figure out. So somebody post a
hmm
message and let me in. I'll be able to see if my new fancy software here can make all that happen. If not, I'm going to be reading these texts as we talk tonight with Jason Duncan from Elite Motors in Voorsville, New York. Jason, thanks for joining us.
My
Hey,
pleasure.
Jason.
Oh, it's great. Glad to have you here. So let's start out with some good news today. Some of the guys watching the Saab forum on Facebook may have realized there was a guy who was in trouble with his Saab. His alternator took a crap, and he wasn't too far from you, and you stepped up to help out. Kind of give us a quick recap of that story, will you?
Well, it's a story that embodies everything about Saab. Everyone's busy with COVID, schedules packed. I normally wouldn't even have answered the phone until it was too late, but through Facebook and text messages, I was informed that somebody was in the area, broke down 2 hours from home, didn't really have any options, needed to get back home, and could I help? And of course, the answer was yes, get it towed in right away. We'll get it sorted out. It turned out to be a simple fix, part failure. I was actually able to work with the other Saab garage that had done the work, get this guy back on the road. He didn't lose a single minute, kept the cost down to next to nothing, and made a friend along the way. And I really think that's what we're here to do.
Oh, that's a great story. So that's super. Let's talk a little bit more about this race car that some of us saw at SOC. Tell us about what this thing is,
hmm
and we'll talk a little bit about what you've done to it.
hmm
Oh, wait. Somehow I turned your sound off there. Let me fix you up there, buddy. Hang on a second. All right, so go
The
ahead.
race
Tell us the
car.
story of this race car.
It's been a lot of things. I had to be a little deceitful to get my friends and family in as free labor to get it built, but ultimately we've dreamed of having a 24-hour Lemons car. We've grown up in a racing family. I've raced since I was 14. This was just one of our bucket list items. In 2017, everyone can remember back that far, Euro Parts was front and center, doing a tremendous job supplying parts to everyone.
Hmm.
And they had announced they were building a sports sedan race car, weekly updates on Facebook. And I followed it closely and it inspired me. I'm like, I can build a sports sedan race car and use it as a show car and check off this Lemons race bucket list item. So enter this. The problem is I desperately wanted it for the first annual Saab or the Eurofest 2017. That didn't leave much more than a month to get it done. My friends and family answered the call, and in just 36 days, we took that wrecked 9.3 and made it to Lime Rock to debut at the same time Euro Parts brought their car. We were able to turn some pretty good laps and put on a show with it. So
That's pretty
it
cool.
was
So you told me that this car, this is the race car, this 9.3 sports sedan. How
that
long before it went into the garage?
that picture was taken literally just before someone got in it and drove it around the building, and we started stripping the interior that night. So a half an hour from when that picture was taken, it had no interior, and the doors were off. We had deployed the airbags and started measuring for the roll cage.
And what's the significance of the silver behind it?
The silver car, we knew we were going to do something for a race car. I found that on Facebook Marketplace. Someone had gone to the expense of converting it to K Sport coilovers, which are fairly expensive. We were able to pick the car for next to nothing. So, obviously, as a race car build, we want to minimize cost. I was able to purchase that whole car for a fraction of what the K Sport coilover suspension kit would have cost.
Cool.
That's awesome. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely.
And so here's a quick look on the internals. Walk us through this process and how long it took you, what was involved.
That picture's deceiving because I'm sure we had race car night scheduled, I think 2 nights a week for every week that was available before the show. Um, it got ramped up, a couple of days off from work. In that picture, I can see the dashboard is fitted around the roll cage and the dashboard is gray. I can tell you that I went through every single tan dashboard I had making mistakes, and the gray one was the perfect fit. Lacing that
Mm.
stock dashboard around all that tubing, to fit my meticulousness took a little doing. Again, the option of painting base clear color body paint on that roll cage, I would not do that again, but it looks beautiful.
It does look great. The very astute among you will look at that gear shift lever and recognize that, wait a minute, that looks like an automatic.
We definitely took a lot of abuse for choosing an automatic, but again, the fact of the matter is, in a turbocharged vehicle, an automatic is absolutely faster in every way. Plus, it's a 24-hour endurance race, and I just could not stomach the idea of one, shifting that much, and two, trusting any clutch or spending thousands of dollars on a clutch that I could trust. So
Hmm.
we opted for the automatic for a lot of reasons.
Hmm.
So, what'd you have to do to make an automatic strong enough to survive a 24-hour race?
These are
Hmm.
ASIN 5-speed gearboxes, so they're notoriously reliable anyway. We did add
Hmm.
a much larger additional transmission cooler, which the first day of racing you do get a break. We actually had overheating issues and added another cooler that night in the garage in the middle of the race. But ultimately, just keeping the transmission cool is the answer.
So let's talk about engine internals. What went on there?
The only thing that engine got, and we had no time, so I just had to trust that it was a low mileage, just 100,000 miles. We never even looked at the engine. We simply bolted on a Corona Performance turbo back, drop-in air
Hmm.
filter, and Brew City Boost hooked us up with a very, very good custom tune, and that's how we raced that car.
And it's fascinating. You said you changed nothing on the internals, which this is completely bone stock motor,
It is
turbo,
everything.
everything.
And I personally didn't even look inside that motor until it was a necessity. The valve cover gasket 100,000 started to leak, and we had an incident where the oil pan was damaged. That was my only view of the inside of the motor, was out of necessity. We did
And
break a couple of charge coolers. It made so much
hmm
boost that the stock charge cooler would just blow up like a basketball. Until
hmm
finally we fitted it with a stock V6 cooler again, just to save
hmm
cost.
Wow.
and this is kind of like the inspiration of using stock parts. I mean, you can only imagine you have someone who's like wanting to put together a little sporty car, and they say, oh, I can take this stock part off of the V6, or I can take this stock part from here, go to the junkyard and get some parts like that and build on a budget a car that can just be fun on the street but also perform on the track. That's amazing to me.
And I think that's the understated part in it. A lot of people find their way to Saab for that reason. It is just the most economical way to go fast, safely, and reliably.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So let's talk a little bit about the racing experience, how that went. How'd you perform? Did you survive?
We did survive. I can't complain. It was a once in a lifetime dream opportunity when we finally made it to New Hampshire Motor Speedway. We did endure quite a bit of abuse. Again, the car was aesthetically much nicer than really anything else there. My attention to detail didn't go unnoticed. And if you're not familiar with the Lemon series, the rule is you have to start with a car that costs no more than $500.
Okay.
By the time we rolled in with this beautifully painted, beautifully caged, perfectly straight, basically show car, no one believed for a second that that car was $500. I can tell you now because it's over with. A Tech 2, I did raise the mileage in the car to 290, to make it more believable that the car was wrecked. And the fact of the matter is, I really did honestly pay $500 for it,
Mm-hmm.
but it looked like a
Mhm.
much more expensive car. We were
Mhm.
able to beg, borrow, and steal some very impressive stuff. We had a Winston Cup team headset. We had a Stacker car trailer. We had a fuel sponsor. So we showed up looking like, oh, here's these rich people. Who do they think they are? And I cannot stress enough, we are not rich, and I don't know what we thought we were. But we had enemies as soon as we got through the gate. I did rent one of the Winston Cup garages, which I now know is kind of a, it rubs people the wrong way. Like, that's a lot of money. Why did you do that? You're a first time race team. We were told by the event sponsors to stay out of everyone's way, that we weren't going to be competitive, and that four of us were driving, that we should probably focus on shorter terms so that everyone gets a chance, because let's face it, Saabs aren't reliable. So at least all of you will get a chance to race. I can tell you at the end of the
So,
first day, they thought differently of Saabs and our race team because it performed fantastically.
Oh, that's so cool.
so just to recap a little bit, I'm just kind of amazed at your story. You basically went into this event with a huge amount of people with a little bit of prejudice, I would say, just because I'm just saying it. Maybe that's the right, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's amazing to see that people or think a certain way, and then all of a sudden you had to prove yourself on the track to really change
It
those
was
minds. I find.
really, it embodied everything that's going on in the world, because asphalt guys, I mean, you can draw a line anywhere and make an issue out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
dirt track race, and they were abusive to us, you know, like we were beneath them, or that we're going to cause trouble, like we're the rebels from the wrong side of the tracks. Don't bring your dirt
Oh man.
track mentality to our asphalt track. Plus the abuse of, how foolish you. Not only did you bring a Saab, you fools, but it's an automatic. It's a
Yeah.
four door.
A
Like,
four-door, yeah.
out of our way. Again, I cannot stress enough. Right down the middle, some people that ran their mouths I never seen again, and some of the teams came over and they're like, "You guys are awesome. We love the energy. We love the performance. We love that you came here and you did what you came to do." And I wish I had included pictures for you to share. It's a
Hmm.
NASCAR sanctioned track, so to have your car number displayed on
Mm-hmm.
that podium in the top 10. We broke the top 10 with that car, and I
Nice.
started 91st out of 106 cars. At the end of my
Wow.
2-hour driving stint, I drove off the track in 17th place.
Wow.
So that was the first 2 hours. We went from 91st to 17th,
Well, you're
and that
no
Wow.
you're no
it,
puppy at this. I mean, here's a shot of one of your cars on the track.
correct. Yeah, and again, that our knowledge comes from a variety of places: go kart racing, dirt track racing, asphalt
Mm-hmm.
racing.
Hmm.
Uh,
And it's in the
that's
family, so this is one of your this is your nephew, is that right?
correct. Yeah, my nephew Lucas.
So it's in
Oh,
the
that's
blood.
awesome.
It's in the blood.
Oh,
That's cool.
absolutely.
All right, so let's. Okay, so we had some questions come in here. Kay was asking, is it a four or a six? And I'm pretty sure it's a four-cylinder. I think Michael Gunn is correct, right?
It is a four-cylinder. Yes, I didn't
Hmm.
have the confidence to build a six-cylinder and trust it for a 24-hour abusive race. And it
Hmm.
boiled down to, if it did break, could we fix it and get back on the track? And the four-cylinder certainly won out there.
So,
Hmm.
if I came to you and said, okay, I've got a 9.3 or, a later 9.5 and I want to go faster, what's the first step? What are you going to tell me?
The first thing I'm going to say is a tune right out of the gate. Reach out to one of our tuners, get a tune in it, and then open up the exhaust. A downpipe, again, from, we have so many options: Corona, genuine Saab, map tune. In the
Hmm.
Saab world, we're very fortunate. So air filter, exhaust, and a tune is really all most people need.
And what kind of output am I going to see? How much more power am I making?
Power is deceiving. The horsepower number comes up a lot. With a four-cylinder with bolt-on mods, you could easily tick over 300 horsepower. In these turbocharged cars, torque is the answer. Torque is what makes your car feel fast. Again,
Hmm.
these numbers increase significantly with just a tune.
Wow.
And I had a question here. We're talking about the four cylinders, but do you ever feel that in the future you're going to explore anything with the V6s? Because I know there are a lot of guys out there with V6s that have been playing around, and maybe people are curious if there's going to be an effort on your part just to see.
I did start hoarding piles of V6 9.3 sports sedans because I had committed that the next one would be a six cylinder because it is
Hmm.
significantly more powerful.
Hmm.
I
Gotcha.
can't commit to that because the V6s are very difficult to keep cool in a racing
Hmm.
environment. While it
Hmm.
would be a tremendous amount of fun, I think we could embarrass a lot of BMWs. I don't know that we could finish the race with a six cylinder, so I may
Gotcha.
stick to a 2 liter.
So
Okay.
on the screen right now, question from Michael asking, he's in Nebraska. Where's his nearest Saab mechanic? Michael, you can go to the Saab Club of North America's web page,
Hmm.
which I think is saabclub.org.
Hmm.
And under resources, you will find a list there, and it shows you all the official OREO authorized Saab service centers. You got any other advice besides that, Jason? Is that the best place to go?
The the official service centers is a great place to start. Again, they're all going to be
Hmm.
busy. I can't stress enough in your area or in general the Facebook groups. I mean, I help
Hmm.
so many people in these different forums, as well as it's a point of contact. I
Hmm.
didn't know the gentleman who broke down yesterday here in Albany, but three people reached out to me saying, "Hey, we've got a colleague in need." So, as many of these Facebook groups as you can join, that really is the answer.
Yeah, and as we've said so often, it's the community that really is what makes these cars so special. That's pretty neat. Well, I don't
Hmm.
know. It's also pretty cool that, if a little software adjustment and you're making 300 horsepower, that's pretty special.
Hmm.
And making 300 horsepower that's not going to leave you stranded. Now, that's the thing I think is
Hmm.
interesting. You're telling me it's going to
Yep.
be 300 reliable horsepower?
Again, the race car is a perfect example. A few CV shafts, and I do believe that was driver error, but we've had virtually no failure, no internal engine failure whatsoever. It really, the cars are capable of that easily. And it's important to remember that they
Okay.
swapped the friction that makes that horsepower. So the transmission, the chassis is certainly capable of it.
Okay.
Hmm. I guess I have a burning question here too. You're talking about the four cylinder here, and you're talking about that 5-speed transmission. Let's say we have people watching this show and they're like, man, I want to go out and get a 5-speed automatic four-cylinder 9.3, sports sedan right now. Where's the best place to go find something like that? A project or something like that? Where will we go?
Again, some of the greatest finds I've found is Facebook Marketplace and the Craigslist,
Oh well.
and the hidden gems are in those groups where if it's a
Hmm.
project, someone's bought a parts car, they're getting out, they're
Hmm.
moving. Other than that, with COVID, everything has gotten a little pricier, so really do
Yeah,
have to stay
understood.
within the groups to find the diamond in the rough.
So let's talk
Gotcha,
a little bit
gotcha.
about the suspension mods that, a lot of guys want to lower their cars. I'm an old classic 900 guy, and, they sit up so high and look kind of silly. Big difference between that generation and the newer cars. I can just
Yes,
drop in some lowering springs, can't I?
correct. In the classic 900, that's really your only option. That suspension is a straight axle, a unique front suspension. But again, even as old as these cars are, in days, you could have a set of lowering springs at your front door.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
reasonably easy labor wise, have your car sitting in a more modern stance.
And I'm an old man. I kind of, I daily this car in the summer. I don't want something that's going to stiff and jar my teeth loose. Am I going to get that problem if I drop it?
Keeping the stock suspension in this classic 900 and just going with, an inch, maybe an inch and a half lowering spring, you would maintain the ride quality, improve the handling, and you wouldn't have any issues at all with that. It doesn't become an issue until you swap to coilovers. Then the ride quality really diminishes quickly. You get a
Hmm.
lot of feedbacks noise wise. So the people that are looking for the really slammed look,
Hmm.
that's at the cost of a lot of drivability and
Yeah.
a lot of comfort, really.
Hmm.
Well, that slammed look is pretty nice. I mean, this is a pretty cool look here. I think that's pretty nifty.
It absolutely
Hmm.
is, and it certainly is a double-edged sword. I've put a lot of miles on that car, as well as the race car on the street and numerous customer-owned cars. It is a huge trade-off because the noise and the ride quality is just so jarring and off-putting. You have to really love the look to tolerate the compromise.
Yeah.
Guys are asking there about modifying brakes. Anything necessary on that?
That is a great question because it is the hurdle that just keeps reoccurring with that race car. Uh, we could have performed much better at New Hampshire Motor Speedway during that Lemons race had I not dropped the ball on brakes. I fitted the car with V6 aero brakes, EBC's best race pads, and it wasn't even close to enough.
Oh,
Before the track day here that we did SOC, I fitted it with Turbo X 345 millimeter rotors, front and rear. That was a huge upgrade. The other popular one is if you can get your hands on the Cobalt SS Brembo brakes, highly recommend it. These cars will certainly go faster than they are capable of stopping.
and
So
that matters.
yeah. The stock 345 brakes from the Turbo X's, are those relatively easy to get hold of, or are those hard to get, or is that just for?
They are impossible to get.
Okay.
If you're willing to spend the money, Saab or Irio can still get a handful of those caliper brackets. And little known secret, the readily available V6 aero brakes, it's the same caliper. You just need the bracket from the Turbo X, which is available new. Otherwise, you can go the route of the 4-piston Brembo, which again, if you're fortunate enough to track one down from a Cobalt, that is a nice upgrade. Clears most stock wheels, and again, be reasonable with your friction material. Buy a decent brake pad. No $20 specials from AutoZone.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, another suspension mod people talk about is going to polyurethane bushings. And, that seems like that's going, like, again, I'm an old man. That seems like that's going backwards to me. I'm not sure I want to do that. Do I?
It's again, we're fortunate that we're working on 10, 20, 30-year-old cars. We can still buy stock bushings. Again, Saab, Euro Parts, or Rio will get us stock bushings. And if you put brand new stock Saab bushings in, you'd be very pleased with the quality. The race car certainly has a lot of neoprene because it's a different aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a trade-off. Not many people are racing to work. So are you going to see an improved benefit that you might notice? Probably not. Just put good stock bushings in.
Yeah.
If you're a real enthusiast, real spirited driving, by all means, neoprene bushings make a difference handling-wise. But again, at the expense of ride quality.
And that's what we're looking at here, right? It's one of the control arms, and you can see the brake calipers dangling in the background. Obviously, you're painting them, and that's that bright blue. Is that a neoprene bushing there?
Yep, that is one of that's actually a very inexpensive. That's a nice upgrade for a 9.5 because they have, even in stock form, set aside lowering it, just to maintain the factory wide quality. The first generation 9.5 has a lot of rear suspension issues, and it can all be traced back to not servicing those bushings, not servicing the control arm bushings. And you got to find a real decent alignment shop they got to get over the anxiety of it's a Saab and do a proper alignment. So in that picture, that's what's happening there. That control arm was fitted with new bushings. That polyurethane bushing I would recommend to every 9.5 owner. It really significantly improves the handling and the tire wear, which is an issue on a lot of these cars.
Yeah. So we talked earlier about lowering springs, and so you put together this photo. Tell me what we got going on here.
Well, I did want to share that while I like to give all the right answers and tell everyone, do the right thing, don't cut your springs, don't heat your springs. We did find ourselves in a situation where that's the coil spring to my 1987 Saab 90, which was imported from Denmark. I would be long dead before I could find lowering springs or any spring that would work. It looked ridiculous sitting high in the front out of desperation. It's hard to tell in that picture. That's an inductive heater we're using to carefully and evenly heat that spring while we compress the coils to achieve the ride height that I was looking for in the absence of an available replacement part. Again, this is do as I say, not as I do. I don't recommend this, but this is a very common way of lowering cars.
Yeah, and so it's just lopping off an inch or two of the spring itself. Tell me more about why can't I just do that?
A lot of technology and engineering goes into these. If you just lob off a coil ring, you have significantly increased the spring rate. That's where you get that jarring ride. And again,
Yeah.
these cars are engineering marvels. Um, when you look up a stock replacement spring, you're going to find, maybe 20 options for some models, because power seats versus not power seats, a sunroof car, V6. I mean, you buy a Ford Focus, you buy a coil spring for a Ford Focus. You buy a Saab 9.3, you need to know its birthday, its best friend in plant. There's the identification plaque on the door will tell you everything.
Hmm.
There's a lot to it, so you got to be mindful of that when you replace springs, sports suspension, not sport. You really got to know what you're looking for and what you're willing to give
Hmm.
up. You,
Tell me about the
modifying,
important.
what's
So,
that?
you know what? I don't think a lot of guys understand what is the role of a shock absorber. Now, it sounds like a silly question, but I'm
Wonderful.
convinced that a lot of guys don't get that.
Plus, it's you got to compare apples to apples. Again, top quality stuff. I've seen 200,000-mile shocks in a Saab perform like they're new.
Hmm.
But again, it's different for an Aero versus a linear versus what trim package you
Hmm.
have. There's Bilstein is a great upgrade to maintain stock
Hmm.
fitting,
Hmm.
but there's a Bilstein B4, a Bilstein B6, a Bilstein B8. There's a huge difference to what you're doing. You could really compromise the ride quality. You make yourself an all-out race car, but who needs that to go to the grocery store and work? You're going to
Hmm.
need a chiropractor once a week. Really, an education goes a long way. Different valving. There's a ton of suspension out there. You can go on Rock Auto and probably buy a
Yeah.
$40 shock for your sports sedan.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably better off leaving the worn out Saab one in there. Different valving, gas versus oil. Some people
Hmm.
will shoehorn a Malibu shock in there. Again, there's a reason when you look up the stock replacement, there's 8 different options. When you go to Napa, they're
Hmm.
like, here's your strut. This is what we offer.
Right.
Hmm.
Huh.
Hey, I had a question, Jason. I
Yeah.
actually put in B6 Bilsteins in Sterling. That's my '06 Saab 9.5 wagon, and
Yep.
I think. Well, not even a question, but I just want to make a statement. I think that upgrade worked very well, and this is just my personal experience. I wanted to share that. So I know the Saab 9.5 at least seems like it's a little bit heavier compared to a 9.3, but the
Correct.
B6
Yep.
Bilsteins worked great. I still was able to maintain corners, and I still had a great drivability, but man, that suspension feels great. I just wanted to share that because that's very important.
Absolutely. And the 9.5 wagon, especially, that is a heavy car. The B6 is a good pair for that. They could have used a
Hmm.
little beefier suspension from the factory. The
Hmm.
Bilstein B8 in a sports sedan significantly improves the handling, but again, you're going to
Hmm.
feel the train cracks. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just
Yeah.
being mindful what you're actually looking for. A lot of regret. I have a lot of people install eBay coilovers. And in a month, they really just want it removed. Can I just go
Hmm.
back to something else?
Yeah.
So before you
Yep.
throw money away or end up disappointed, and most Saab people will communicate with you, what they had, go for a ride, maybe take their car for a drive.
Hmm.
But before you spend the money, there's so many options. And even though these cars are older, we just have an endless supply of options. I know Esab puts
Hmm.
together kits. He didn't just wake
Hmm.
up one day and be like, here's this stuff. He personally has tested most of this, a ton of feedback. So there's
Hmm.
tons of information out there.
Hmm.
Okay,
Awesome.
we're about wrapping it up here. Give me
Hmm.
what do you want to see come through the door, Jason? You told me that you're kind of down to a one-man band right now and busy as can be. Is there you want to take on new work? Is there projects you're eager to tackle?
I love the projects, but it's just not possible. I have so many of my own. Ultimately, I've had to, with COVID, my business partner decided to leave, move on to a different area. It's almost impossible to get help. So, what I'm focusing on for myself personally is just getting this loyal Saab customers in and out, serviced as best I can. And the
Hmm.
tough part of that is, and it's flattering, but I've had to turn away my Chevy Silverado customers, my Ford Taurus customers.
Mm-hmm.
to get as many of the Saab people in as I can. It being one person and there's only 24 hours in a day. In a perfect world, we're going to get caught up, get some help here, and my goal is to just keep these Saabs on the road for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, the best place to find Jason is on Facebook, and you can find him at
Mm-hmm.
Elite Motors, and it's Voorheesville, is that right?
Yep. Voorheesville, New York. Yep.
Voorheesville, New York,
Mm-hmm.
just south of Albany. Hey, Jason, really enjoyed chatting with you. Thanks for helping us out.
Excellent. Glad to have me on.
Thanks, Jason.
Hey, you bet. So, Mark, my understanding is we were live on YouTube here, but possibly not on Facebook. Something.
Yeah. I had someone message me just now and wondering if we had a show tonight. So I'm wondering if our Facebook link didn't quite go through. I'm not quite sure there.
I don't think it did, and so we'll post it as a recording. We'll find it there and get it up so you can see. But hey, all you guys over on YouTube, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
And we will see you again next Thursday. Mark, before we go, you had an experience today. You want to share your knowledge with these people about something that I would never have thought.
Oh, okay. So I actually was able to experience this firsthand. I was out going to Charlottesville in Virginia, and I filled up with some gasoline at a gas station. It was 93 octane, but it was a gas station brand which I wasn't as familiar with, Valero. And I don't know if it was just the gas, whatever. But I filled up my 2005 95 ARC with just $20 worth, and immediately I had. It didn't seem to run as well and so forth. And even on the way into work this morning, this was yesterday, on the way into work this morning, I gunned it and I actually got a flashing check engine because the engine was just barking at me. So I go after work and I fill up with Costco premium gas at a much cheaper price. That Valero gas was $4.07 a gallon. The Costco gas was about $3.69, and I found the Costco gas did much better. So if you guys actually I can't remember the exact website right now, but there's a website you can go and look and research to find out which gas stations carry the top tier fuels. They actually do have a list of top tier fuels that gas stations carry in the country, and you can actually find out where the best 93 octane gas is to get. And I experienced firsthand that if you get a trusted source that you have for premium fuel, stick with it. My go-tos have been Shell and Costco, and I just reiterated that myself through my firsthand experience, just stopping offhand, and it's just like it said 93 in the pump, but I tell you what, in the car it did not handle like it.
Well, good for you. I don't know that I would have really equated that to bad gas. That's happened so rarely to me, but good thinking on
Yeah.
your part.
Yeah, but absolutely. And just one thing, only buy top tier gas is what
Right,
comment was
Judy.
coming from Judy H. But
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Gasoline is as much important as any other fluid that goes into your Saab, as well as all the other thoughts and careful research we do into parts. So it's just one thing that we could potentially take for granted, but I was just reminded today that it's so important that you got to go to where the good gas is, and you got to do your research and make sure you have a good, reputable source.
All right, buddy, we're going to leave it there and wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next week for another episode of Saab Talk Live.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.